Hi again, Mark here from talkingbass.net. This is the fourth in the series of bass chord lessons as part of my music theory series. So we've now covered all the triads and you should already have a pretty good idea of how chord construction works from all the earlier chord and arpeggio construction lessons. If you don't know how chords are built, then make sure to go over all the earlier lessons. They're all there on the YouTube channel and they're easily found over at the lesson map at talkingbass.net. So now let's move on to seventh chords. Instead of a load of different chords in different positions, like I've covered in the last few lessons, for the sevenths I'll just be going through two shapes per chord. One on the E string, or built on the E string, and one built from the A string. We've so far dealt with 8 seventh chords, 2 extensions for each of the 4 triads. So for the major triad we have the major 7 and dominant 7. For the minor triad we have the minor 7 and minor major 7 chord. For the augmented triad we have the major 7 sharp 5 and the dominant 7 sharp 5, and for the diminished triad we've got the minor 7 flat 5 and the diminished 7 chord. So let's start with the major triad extensions, the major 7 and the dominant 7. We're going to be looking at chords built from a root note C based on the A string and chords with the root note G built from the E string. So first of all we'll look at the C major 7. For this chord we're going to use the notes C, E and B. As with some of the triads, we're missing the 5th, the G, so we're left with the root, the 3rd and the 7th. Now this works fine because, as we saw earlier, the 5th has little impact on the chord unless it's an augmented or a diminished chord, or if we're harmonising a melody that contains a 5th, then we obviously have to take it into account. But for now, we'll just stick with the root, 3rd and 7th bass voicings. So take the C at the 15th fret of the A string with the 2nd finger, the E at the 14th fret of the D string with the 1st finger, and the B up here at the 16th fret of the G string with the 3rd finger. Okay, so we have C, E and B, root, 3rd and 7th. So this C major 7 chord has a very lush sound that tends to sound a little bit more bittersweet than the basic major triad. You can hear that 7th wanting to resolve, so there's a kind of hanging tension in the air, even though the chord is basically happy at its core. I suppose it's the chordal equivalent of a supposedly happy relationship. So we've got C major 7 there, there's the major triad, or there. Okay, and you can hear that 7th. Now you should always keep an awareness of the intervals that you're playing within these chords. Don't just learn them as mindless patterns. Always try to see that root there, the 3rd and the 7th, and understand what that brings to the sound of the chord. You don't want to be the equivalent of a musical manager with no interest in what each member of the team brings to the table. So always see each individual interval, and that also helps with building these as well on the fly. You know, if you need a chord, instead of just learning it as a block pattern, you can think, right, okay, well I need a major 7, I know that I've got the root, the 3rd and the 7th, or a 5th even, and you can construct them yourself just on the fly. So now let's look at the dominant 7 chord in the same position. So for a C7, all that we've got to do is drop that B down to the B flat. So the major 7th is becoming a minor 7th, or flat 7. So now instead of C, E, B, we've got C, E, B flat. Okay, so this C7 is going to be the C there, 15th fret on the A string with the 2nd finger, the E, the 14th fret on the D string with the 1st finger, and the B flat there, the 15th fret on the G string with the 3rd finger. Okay, there's C7, so C major 7, C7. So you want to listen to how that's the C7 is different to the C major 7. They're both built on a foundation of the major triad, but the major or minor 7th interval makes a lot of difference. That C7 tends to sound a little bit more bluesy, whereas that C major 7 has got that, again, that bittersweet kind of sound. And here's the dominant 7. It's got that real bluesy edge to it. So now let's build those two chords starting on the E string. So we'll look at the G major 7 and G7. So for the G major 7, we'll take the G here, 15th fret of the E string, And then we want the 7th, so we want the F sharp there at the 16th fret of the D string. And then you also want the 16th fret for the B on the G string, okay? So we've got those 3 notes there. We've got the G, F sharp, and B. So the pattern is there, and you can use the first finger for the G there on the E string, and then you have a choice of either using the 3rd finger and 4th finger for those 2 notes on the top, or you can bar your little finger across, or even bar your 3rd finger across. Either way, I tend to use first finger for the G, and then or the root note, and then bar the 4th finger across. Now for the G7, we can take that same pattern there of the G major 7 and just drop that F sharp on the D string down a semitone down to the F. So we've got the major 7th is becoming the minor 7th or flat 7, okay? So we end up with this shape. So we've got G, 15th fret on the E string, then we've got the F, 15th fret on the D string, that's with the 2nd finger, and then the 3rd finger can take the B there, the 16th fret up on the G string. So you want to play these chords around the neck and get used to the look and sound of them. The dominant 7's a really popular chord and really useful. So take a note of the interval between the 3rd and the 7th. You've got this diminished 5th interval, so in this G7 up here, and that diminished 5th interval is also called a tritone, and that's going to be really important in later lessons. That tritone has a very distinctive sound. On its own, it can sound really like evil, you know, but put that root note of the G below it, and we get into blues territory, okay? So there it is on its own. Evil, blues. So with the C7, you can see it there between the 3rd and the 7th again. Tritone. The reason it's called a tritone is because tri, 3, it's 3 tones apart. So if we take a C, for instance, we've got the C there, move up a tone, we get to a D, move up another tone, we get to an E, up another tone, we get to an F sharp. So that's 3 tones. So C to F sharp across there is a tritone, okay? Or a diminished 5th or augmented 4th. But you get used to that shape, that's the tritone shape. So now we have the dominant 7 chord, let's take a look at a really popular chord progression that just uses it exclusively, and that's the basic form of the 12-bar blues. So let's play it in G to begin with. So we have 3 chords, G7, C7, and D7. So that's 1, 4, and 5, and each one of them is a dominant 7 chord. So the chord progression goes as follows. We've got G7 at chord 1 for 4 bars. Then we've got the C7 chord 4 for 2 bars. Then we're back to G7 for another 2 bars. Then we go up to D7 chord 5 for a bar. C7 for a bar, so chord 4 again. And then back to chord 1 for a bar. And then we can go up to the chord 5 again, D7 for a turnaround. So you'll see this chord progression on screen, and it's also in the PDF, but I'll just go through it. So we've got G7 for 4 bars. C7, 2 bars, G7, D7, C7, G7. Okay. So that's an incredibly basic version of the 12-bar blues, and in upcoming lessons I'm going to show you can modify that progression to make it more interesting and jazz it up a little. But for now, just get used to that feeling of that 12-bar cycle. Use any finger picking pattern or comp pattern that you like, even something as simple as this, like 1 chord per beat. Okay, any kind of comp pattern at all, and just keep running through that progression and just get used to it. So that's the major 7 and dominant 7 chords. Now let's look at the 7 chords built from the minor triad. So that's the minor 7 and the minor major 7. The minor 7 is a minor triad with a minor 7th on top, and the minor major 7 is a minor triad with a major 7 on top. So it's the same deal as with the major 7 and dominant 7, but with the minor triad instead of the major triad. So first the A string based chords. So here's the Cmaj7. So we've got the C here, 15th fret of the A string. Then we've got the E flat, at the 13th fret of the D string there with the first finger. And then we've got the B flat up there at the 15th fret of the G string with the third finger. So we've got second finger, first finger, third finger, okay? And that's the C, E flat, B flat, or root, minor third, minor 7. And that's the Cmaj7. Now for the C minor major 7, just keep that same finger in there and remove the B flat and replace it with the B using the fourth finger, which gives us C, E flat, B, or root, minor third, major 7. So that's with the second finger, first finger, and the fourth finger. And have a listen to the difference between those two chords. So we've got the minor 7, and we've got the minor major 7, which is a lot more dissonant. So now let's build those two chords from an E string root. So we're going to use the G minor 7 and G minor major 7. For the G minor 7, we've got this real simple pattern of just the root there, G, 15th fret on the E string, and then we use the 15th fret for the D string and the G string as well. So we've got the F there, 15th fret on the D string, and the B flat there, the 15th fret on the G string. So they're all on the same fret going across, and we just miss out the A string. Okay, and I'm using the first finger, the second finger, and the third finger. Okay, that's G minor 7. For the G minor major 7, we just use that same pattern, all on the same fret, and then we just change it so that we've got the major 7 there. Okay, so we've got the G, 15th fret on the E string, then use the third finger to get the F sharp there, the major 7th. There it's the 16th fret on the D string, and then the second finger takes the B flat, 15th fret on the G string. Okay, so we've got the root, the major 7th, and the third up on the top. Okay, again, pretty dissonant, and then compare that with G minor 7. So G minor 7, G minor major 7. So that's the 7th chords based on the minor triad. I'll keep going quickly through the remaining 7ths. So the next 7th chords are going to be based on the augmented triad. So we have the major 7 sharp 5 and the dominant 7 sharp 5, or augmented 7th. Now this is where the problems start, because we have to include the 5th, the sharpened 5th or flattened 5th, and the other notes are also fairly important. So for these voicings, I'm going to miss out the 3rd, just as I did in the previous lesson with the augmented and diminished chords. And that's because the augmented and diminished chords are probably there for a good reason. And that sharp or flat 5's probably playing an important role. It's either going to be in the melody or some voice leading or flavour. So with that in mind, let's have a look at the C major 7 sharp 5 or and the C dominant 7 sharp 5 built from the A string. Okay. So for the C major 7 sharp 5, we'll use the C here at the 15th fret of the A string. Then we're going to use the G sharp here at the 18th fret of the D string with the 4th finger. And then we're going to use the major 7th there at the B at the 16th fret of the G string. Okay? So we've got the root, sharp 5, major 7. No 3rd in there. Okay? So for the C7 sharp 5 or C augmented 7, we can use that same voice in there of the root, sharpened 5th and 7th. Just drop that B down to the B flat, so the flat 7 or minor 7 there, giving us that voicing. So we've got the C there, 15th fret on the A string, then the sharpened 5th there, the G sharp at the 18th fret of the D string, and then the B flat there at the 15th fret of the G string. Both the C and the B flat are with the first finger there, so I'm barring across and just using the 4th finger for the G sharp. And of course these voicings are not ideal because we're missing the 3rd, which is a really important note, but because I'm only limited to these 3 strings, I've got to be quite brutal with the notes that I'm missing out. Now for the G major 7 sharp 5, based on the E string. Now for this I'm going to actually use the full 4 notes of the bar chord shape. So here we can take the G there on the 15th fret of the E string. Then we're going to use the D sharp there at the 18th fret of the A string. So we've got the root and the sharpened 5th. And then we want the major 7th there, so we've got the F sharp at the 16th fret of the D string, and we're going to have the B there, the major 3rd, up at the 16th fret of the G string. So the way to do this is to use the first finger there for the G, then hold down the major 7th and the 3rd up there with the 2nd and 3rd fingers, and then you want to bring your 4th finger across to get that D sharp at the 18th fret. Okay, so it's a pretty tricky fingering really. So go for those first, which is the major 7 voicing that we used before, and then just hook the D sharp over. Okay. Now for the G7 sharp 5, we're going to use exactly the same principle. So if we go for the G7 that we saw before, so the G, the F and the B there, using the G there, 15th fret of the E string, F, 15th fret of the D string, and the B up at the 16th fret of the G string, and then just hook the little finger over to catch that D sharp at the 18th fret of the A string. Okay. Okay, and that's the full chord, G7 sharp 5 or G augmented 7. So now let's finally move on to the 7ths based on the diminished triad. That's the -7 flat 5 and the diminished 7th. If you think back to our chord construction lessons, the -7 flat 5 is a diminished triad with a -7 added on top, also called the half diminished. And the diminished 7 chord is a diminished triad with a diminished 7th interval added on top. This can also be seen as a major 6th interval, and the diminished 7 is notable for being a symmetrical chord made up of completely stacked minor thirds. So let's take a look at the Cmaj7 Flat 5, starting here on the A string. So for this we want the C there, the 15th fret on the A string, and then we're going to use the flat 5 there, the G flat, which is the 16th fret of the D string, and then we're going to have the minor 7th, which is the B flat up there at the 15th fret of the G string. Okay, so we've got the first finger taking the A string and the G string, barred across there, and then we just put the second finger down there for the G flat. Okay, so that's the Cmaj7 Flat 5. So as with the augmented based 7th chords, I'm leaving out the 3rd. So ordinarily we'd have the E flat there, the minor 3rd for the -7 flat 5, but instead we're just sticking to the flattened 5th and the flattened 7th, obviously the root. So it does still keep that -7 flat 5 sound. For the Gmaj7 Flat 5, starting on the E string, we've got two different chord shapes. One of them is the complete bar chord, and this is going to include the 3rd as well. So we've got the root, the flat 3, the flat 5, and the flat 7. So for this one, use the Gmaj7 shape that we had before. So first finger, second finger, and 3rd finger taking all 15th frets on the E string, D string, and G string. Okay, so we've got the G, the F, and the B flat there. And then you just use this 4th finger to come down here and catch this D flat at the 16th fret of the A string. Okay, so the complete chord, which your fingers do get all a little bit twisted and enclosed down here, and it does sound a little bit muddy, but we do have all the notes there. Okay, now there is another voicing in which we use the G there, 15th fret on the E string, and again use the F, the 15th fret on the D string, just as we did before, but this time we're going to use the D flat up on the G string there at the 18th fret, okay, with the 4th finger. So we're missing out the 3rd, and we're just substituting it with the 5th, flattened 5th up there, and that's a much cleaner voicing. But of course we don't have the minor 3rd in there, so it's not complete, but it is cleaner. Okay, so that's Gmaj7 Flat 5. So now let's look at the diminished 7 chord, and first of all we'll look at the C dim 7. So that's it up here on the A string, and there's two voicings for this. So we've got the one starting with the 2nd finger on the C here, and then we're going to have the 3rd finger take the G flat there on the 16th fret of the D string, and then we've got the 1st finger taking the A or B double flat up here on the G string, okay, at the 14th fret. So we've got 15th fret A string, 16th fret D string, and 14th fret G string. C, G flat, A or B double flat. Okay, so that's a C dim 7, and of course we've missed out the minor third again, but as per usual, because of all these minor thirds in there, it's got the sound of the diminished 7. Now the other fingering is very similar. We use the third finger for the C there, 15th fret of the A string, then we actually use the minor third, so we've got the E flat there, so this voicing's a little bit lower. So that's with the first finger there, 13th fret of the D string, and then we've got the A again, so the 14th fret of the G string, this time with the second finger. So third finger, first finger, second finger, C, E flat, A, or B double flat. Okay, so they're both very similar sounding, and which one you use will be pretty much determined by chords that precede it and proceed it. Okay, C dim 7. So now lastly, let's look at the G diminished 7. So this is based on the E string. We're going to use the second finger to play the G there, 15th fret on the E string. Then we want to use the first finger for the E, which is here at, or F flat, the diminished 7th there, at the 14th fret of the D string. And then we're going to use the third finger for the B flat up at the 15th fret of the G string. Okay, so we've got G, F flat or E, B flat, G dim 7, okay? That's the second finger, first finger, third finger. So that's the 7th chords. Obviously, there's quite a few patterns to learn there, so don't worry about nailing them all immediately. First of all, just concentrate on nailing the 3 basic chords, the major 7, the minor 7 and the dominant 7. Just stick to those. They're easily the most popular. Then add the diminished 7 and minor 7 flat 5 chords into the mix because they're quite common, but the major 7, dominant 7 and the minor 7, they're just used all the time, so just stick to those. To help with learning these chords, I'll give you a couple of chord progressions to work on. First of all, we'll take that ever popular 1-6-2-5 sequence that I've played in a few of the lessons. So we'll do that in the keys of C and G. So in the key of C, we've got C major 7, chord 1. Chord 6 is A minor 7, chord 2 is D minor 7, and chord 5 is G7. Okay, so C major 7, A minor 7, D minor 7, and G7. And the C major 7 will be with the starting on the A string, A minor 7 with a root on the E string, D minor 7 with a root on the A string, and G7 with a root on the E string. So you want to try different finger picking patterns and different comp patterns, and I'll just demonstrate. So we're going to take each chord for 1 bar, okay? So here we go, 2, 3, 4. Now I'll try with a different comping pattern. So this is with 1 chord per beat, okay? So 2, 3, 4. Okay, and as per usual, I'll always be using the thumb, first finger and second finger of this hand. So now we'll try a different finger picking pattern, okay? So now we'll try that same progression, 1-6-2-5, in G major. So that gives us G major 7. So that's on the starting on the E string pattern. E minor 7, okay, with a root on the A string. A minor 7 with a root on the E string, and D7 with a root on the A string. Okay, so we've got. Okay. And again, use various different comping patterns. Okay, so this time we'll try a different chord progression incorporating the diminished 7 chord. So we're going to use a very similar chord progression to the 1-6-2-5, and this will be in C major. But we're going to use chord 1, C major 7. Then we're going to use the sharp 1 or flat second C sharp diminished 7 chord there. So this is very similar to what we did in the previous lesson with the diminished chord as a passing chord. Okay, so we've got C major 7, C sharp dim 7, D minor 7, G7. Okay, chord 1, then the sharpened first for the diminished 7, then 2, 5. C major 7, C sharp diminished 7, D minor 7, G7. Okay, and you can hear that it is fairly similar to the 1-6-2-5. I'll play them one after the other. So 1-6-2-5, and now. Okay. So for this, I'm going to use the C major 7, starting with the root note on the A string. Then we're going to use the C sharp diminished with the root on the A string, and it's going to be the C sharp, E, and then B flat there up at the top. Okay, so the root flat third, and then the diminished 7. Okay, so we've got the 16th fret of the A string, the 14th fret of the D string, and the 15th fret of the G string there. C sharp diminished 7. And I'm playing each one for 2 beats. Okay? If we transpose that chord progression to G major, we get the following chord progression. G major 7, G sharp diminished 7, A minor 7, D7. Okay? All these chord progressions and fingerings are all available in the PDF that you can download from the info below or at talkingbass.net. So have a mess around with these chords and try playing through as many chord progressions as you can get a hold of. Fake books like the Real Book are great resources for things like this, with loads and loads of jazz standards, but also try getting a hold of things like the Beatles Anthology songbook that will contain loads and loads of different songs in loads of different keys for you to try. Like I said, concentrate on the major 7, the minor 7 and the dominant 7 chords built from the E string and the A string root notes. And once you have those really nailed, the other chords will become easier because they're all based on those basic core patterns. Okay, as I always say, please like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel for updates on my weekly lessons. Also visit talkingbass.net to see the lesson map and a whole bunch of articles and downloads that's growing all the time. Subscribe to the newsletter for new updates and to receive the wonderful and free Scale Reference Guide ebook. Okay, see you later.